This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And today he's going to be reacting to the game we've received the most requests for. Seriously, a lot of you asked for this.
What was that? So I'm getting the sense that this is not a realistic take on the Western genre. It is not a game that I had even seen prior to being asked about it for this. So this is pretty much new to me. But where I am familiar and comfortable is with the single action Army Colt revolver. Guessing from the state of the thing and the lack of grips that there is a deterioration, repair, maintenance mechanic going on. More importantly, apart from your 45 Colt rounds, which would be quite handy, this thing's got this, what at first I thought was like a skull smasher, as they're sometimes called, pommel on the bottom of the grip, which is not something that the Colt came with, but is something that you could weld on there or something if you wished. What this appears to be is actually a very short knife, and we're getting some Walking Dead style head kills using this incredibly short, obtusely angled blade. I'm picking up the customization options here because I know the Colt 1872 revolver is in the game. This is a reproduction. We don't have one in the collection in the Royal Armouries, sadly. This version, with the weird, funky chain belt feed, is, I think, based on this. This is the Treby chain gun. It works much like a single-action revolver. Cocking it revolves not a cylinder, but a chain of chambers to the next position. Pulling the trigger, I will ease it down. Fires off that chamber. Cock it again to revolve to the next one. So pretty much like the game. This is percussion though, so you'd have to muzzle load each of these chambers, whereas what we see there is slightly fudged reload animation where the empty case is somehow pulled out without using the ejector. So they're just doing it manually and they're just kind of glossing over how that happens, which is fair enough. The 1872 Colt would be interesting enough because they rarely show up in Western fiction, but to sort of combine it with the Treby, or hey, maybe they've come up with that idea on their own, I don't know. But we certainly have a Victorian equivalent of that in the collection, which is good. I like that. If it wasn't for the fact you only get one shot, that's almost like an ideal zombie weapon. That's a 12 gauge single barrel break open shotgun. They were very common in the Old West. That looked like it might be an Ivor Johnson or a Stevens or something. And it's obviously been modified with quite a cool hatchet attachment and is drastically cut down. If this is like 1880s and the cartridges are black powder, you would want a smokeless powder loaded cartridge, basically, because if you're firing black powder out of that shorter barrel, it's going to be pretty weak. The burnt rate of black powder is different and wouldn't be hugely effective. So we'll have to assume that those are nitro cartridges. Incidentally, the cartridges looked quite authentic. There's a tendency in games to just stick modern looking cartridges, which don't look totally out of place, but those with the different color and the detail of the head stamp, that actually looked like they dug out some late 19th century, early 20th century maybe cartridges to model there. That's a bit of a wacky choice there for Old West America. I'm not quite sure. There's probably some lore or story reason why there's a Russian service revolver from the end of the 19th century, 1895 model, the Gant revolver, as to why that's in the game. Interesting because it's got the Bramit device, or a version of it. It's actually not just a suppressor, it's got a sort of sabot in a modified form of the cartridge that stops all the gas from escaping. That's why it's not huge and sticking off the end of the gun, is because it traps the gas as the bullet leaves the barrel, and then as you revolve to the next chamber, releases that trapped wind, as it were. So not actually a conventional silencer. As to whether it'd be quite as quiet as that, I don't think anybody knows for sure, because I've not seen that version of the device ever, and I've not seen it or heard of it being tested. There's no reason to think it wouldn't be very quiet based on how it works, but whether it would be quite as quiet as that, can't say. This has confused me greatly, this bizarre contraption, because it is very familiar. It looks like Joseph Huot's conversion of the Ross rifle. It's got all the features of that conversion, but it is also definitely based on a Russian Mosin rifle, which doesn't make any sense, because because it's a conversion of the Ross is a straight-pull design. So you just have to make the bolt get pulled to the rear and then pushed forward again to chamber around. Can't just do that to a Mosin, which is a turn bolt. You have to lift up the bolt quite drastically and then push it or pull it to the rear. You could probably do it, but it would need a huge machined cam plate, like some of the Enfield conversions that turn rearward movement of a piston into upward and rearward movement of a turn bolt. I know I'm overanalyzing this, but that's kind of my job. An iconic but not super common Western pistol is the LeMat. Very interesting because of, well, not only 9 shots in the cylinder, which is uncommon for a revolver, but also a 20 gauge shotgun second barrel under the main barrel. The video game version in this case is quite different. They've based it on a real version, which is, as far as I know, was built for the TV. So if you've seen the Westworld TV show, you've seen this version of the gun. This is a percussion muzzle loader. So you'd have to stoke up 9 chambers and the shotgun barrel with a wad and some shot ahead of time. And then in a realistic fighting situation, that's your 10 shots. You don't get to reload it. In the 1870s, we see older designs like this, cartridge converted. That didn't happen with the LeMat, as far as I know. But there is this movie magic version that's in Westworld where you have to take the gun apart. It increases loading speed a bit, but doesn't allow you to reload it like we see in the game. What they've done is take it another step further and completely redesign the gun so that instead of the front barrel assembly coming off, it pivots downwards. That would not work because there is no way to latch this cylinder shut, which is critical. If you don't have a top strap, you need some way of latching the cylinder shut that is super strong. So they fudged it, which is fine. You can't put a percussion firearm in a game like this without making it uber powerful to compensate. So they haven't. So that's fair enough. Pause. Bit of a curious fighting pistol for any situation, actually. But what we've just seen is a version of the Sharps patent Derringer. It does work pretty much as seen. So you put it on half cock, press a catch under the barrel, which you don't see really in the game, slide the barrel unit forwards, and then you put your little cartridges in there. You're not going to get much powder in that case, so the power is going to be quite low. So you're relying purely on the bullet diameter to do the damage. And from what I saw in the clip there, this thing seems to be a bit of a beast. So I'd say it's probably too powerful for what it is. Hey, maybe it's charmed or something, I don't know. It's a nice bit of variety, and these are quite nice antiques. The old reliable Sharps rifle, very common in the West for things like buffalo hunting. And we do see scoped versions like that. You definitely wouldn't want to be clobbering anything with any scoped rifle, to be fair, but especially not a something of that vintage. The slightest knock could easily put that out of 0, and suddenly you're missing your single shot. You've only got one shot with this design, of course. The other thing I noticed about it is the hammer. Something very strange going on with the hammer. With the Sharps, the percussion Sharps, you had to half cock before you open the lever and do your thing, because you needed to be able to cap the nipple. The metallic cartridge version, which is what we see here, there's no need to be fiddling with the hammer at all. So whereas the reload animation has the character sort of semi-cock it, open the lever, put the cartridge in, and then it gets decocked at one point and then cocked again before firing. You don't need to do any of that. You just drop the lever, cartridge in, lever up, cock it, fire it. Pausing. Variety of shotguns is good. We've also got the Spencer 1882, which is a relatively early, in fact, importantly early, pump action, slide action shotgun. It's got an unusual action by modern standards that flips up out of the top of the gun, as you see there. Incidentally, if people are wondering, what looks like a second trigger in the trigger guard is the action bar lock, which is something that's on modern pump action guns as well, although you're not aware of it in fiction because the gun is never empty. So. But that's what locks the gun shut. I suppose a word on the fictional names of all the guns in the game, because that one's visible on the top of the receiver. Having looked it up, I realised that all the names are what I would normally call legally different. But in most cases, there's no one around that would sue you for calling this a Spencer, I don't think. I'm not going to get into the legal side of it. I'm not a lawyer. There's definitely a stylistic choice to fictionalize the companies in the game, and I don't know why that's the case necessarily. This is actually a really good addition to a game like this. If you were having to hunt supernatural creatures in a late 19th century time period, you would want something like a big game rifle, and that's what this is. And to get through a thick skull like that, you need some serious power. So this is apparently a 600 Nitro, which is 600 Nitro Express, which is one of the cartridges developed by the company Jeffries in the late 19th century. The word nitro refers to nitro powders or smokeless propellants, which are obviously more effective, more efficient, cleaner burning. It was almost like a hybrid, so a giant bottle-shaped and sized cartridge with a round-nosed bullet using nitro powder to propel it to decent velocities, high velocities. So would work nicely on these creatures. If you'd like to donate to the Royal Armouries Museum, we have links in the description. I also have a book coming out fairly shortly on British bullpup firearms. So head over to the Headstamp Publishing website if you'd like to pick up a copy of that. Thanks, guys.